Welcome to Glass Half Full with Leslie Krongold. She shares her stories, experiences, and knowledge of living and coping with a chronic health condition. Learn about tools and resources and hear inspirational interviews that help you to live a life filled with quality and dignity. With 2 decades of support group leadership, Leslie's ready to help you make lemonade out of life's lemons. Are you ready?
Hello. As I record the introduction for this podcast episode, it's Valentine's Day. I'm reminded of very early Valentine's Day celebrations in high school, where the practice was to buy the huge package of little cards and write them to everyone in your class, or almost everyone. Maybe not the little boy who ate paste because he was kind of scary, but everyone else, boys and girls, the ones you liked and the ones who were brats. Either in middle or high school, the ritual became a bit more complicated. We'd pay money to have cupcakes delivered to someone in their class. We could have or be secret admirers. Of course, those were the days when your cupcake choices were chocolate or vanilla hard icing on yellow cake. One's graciousness became a bit more selective, and no longer were you expected to be nice and all-inclusive. As a tip of the hat to this holiday, celebrated since the 3rd century, I wanted to broach the topic of romance, which is complicated for everyone, whether you have a disability or not. A few years ago, I literally found Dr. Danielle Shapuk, a clinical psychologist, on Facebook. She stood out in one of the Facebook groups I was in for people with muscular dystrophy. I can't remember her post, but I was impressed, so I contacted her. At the time, I was working for a patient advocacy organization and wanted to produce a webinar about depression. Of course, depression is an issue I'd imagine most psychologists can speak to, but hearing from someone with a disability would offer so much more than the traditional medical perspective. And it certainly did. There's a link to the webinar with Dr. Shapuk in the podcast notes. So when I realized I wanted to broach romance, I remembered that Dr. Shapuk was known for her work in the disabled community, and her work on dating and relationships and sexuality. So I contacted her again. So just a little bio information. Danielle Shapuk was born with SMA, spinal muscular dystrophy. She was born and raised in a small Pennsylvania town, but now lives in New York City. And she's known for her advocacy work in the disability community, a fashion model and winner of Ms. Wheelchair New York in 2012, as well as a self-described sexpert and leading commentator on the psychology of dating, relationships, and sexuality for the disabled population. Tell me a little about your path, your journey to becoming a sexpert for the disabled community.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. And I love it because sexpert is a term that people don't associate with the disabled community. So I like the two paired together. And so that being said, I chose to study psychology, but completely not related to any focus on disability. At the time when I chose it, I just chose it because I liked the theory of it. I liked the whole aspect of talking to people and different concepts of psychological thought and implementing them. So that's really why I went into psychology. And then I moved to New York to go to grad school and get my PhD, because to really be a psychologist and have a private practice, you need a PhD. And again, I came to New York with just studying general psychology, but it just so happened it coincided with my idea that if I moved to New York, I would have a better chance of finding love for myself. kind of right out of the show Sex and the City.
Okay.
I thought, hey, big city. I'm from a small town. People in big cities have open minds, and I'm not really having much luck dating. So maybe I'd have better luck in the city. So that's how I came to New York. And then as I was studying psychology, I started dating on Match.com, which was my first experience dating and online dating, and my first physical dates, period, in person. And that's when I realized, or I really saw clearly, the discrepancy between dating with a disability and not having a disability and dating, because I compared myself to my friends who were in my classes who didn't have disabilities, but we were the same on many levels, except the fact that I had a disability and they didn't. And I seemed to be getting much less responses from men than they did. Mm-hmm. So at the time I was watching Sex and the City, and I was thinking, geez, why isn't there someone to ask advice from, or why isn't anyone talking about this like Carrie Bradshaw is doing about sex for able-bodied people? Like, there's really no one that I know of that I could turn to or talk to or read about or anything like that. So that's when the two paths merged into one. And I got my degree, and I started writing about sex and disability and my own experiences dating. And then I started seeing private clients, and I wanted to see clients with disabilities. And so that's when I opened my Skype practice. And so since that time, I've seen many, many clients with and without disabilities. And I've given many, many lectures about dating and sexuality. And through all of that experience, I feel that I can hold the title of sexpert, or someone really knowledgeable about sex and relationships and disability. And again, I like that how it's kind of pop culture, because we need that with disability. It's not always so serious, like mixing pop culture and sex and dating. And it's a nice, refreshing combination. Working with people with disabilities, I see a lot of low self-esteem when it comes to dating and viewing yourself as a sexual person, and a self-concept that includes seeing yourself as sexy or as a suitable romantic partner or as a potential romantic partner. Contrasting that to being very easy to see ourselves as not being a desirable romantic partner to someone else. So commonly voiced as, I don't really see how anyone could love me, quote unquote, or I don't really see how someone's going to be able to look past my disability and see the person that I am. So statements like that. And the second piece of that is just society not being exposed to people with disabilities as sexual beings. So, and this goes back in the literature to old notions of disability, when we see people as poster childs or trying to get money from, corporations or companies using people with disabilities to get people to give money to help with cures and treatment. And that's all great. And I'm not arguing against that, but there's a whole other side of disability. And as you know, it's just leading a normal life and being a sexual person and being able to date. But the sad part is in the beginning, it's hard for society and able-bodied people to see that, just because they've never been exposed that much. So those two factors combined, this low self-esteem about dating, and then not really having people approach you to date, they both reinforce each other. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've been trying to change for a while now. And I feel like change has happened. I see it with my clients, because I've had clients who have come to me saying, no one's ever going to love me. Like, forget it. It's not going to happen for me ever. And then a little bit down the road, guess what? I'm engaged. I found someone there. It's so great. So I've seen that, and I've seen people with very severe disabilities having fantastic romantic relationships, giving birth, having multiple partners, having, these fulfilling sex lives in various ways. So I've seen it that way. And even in my own personal experience, I feel like I've seen a change with the dates that I go out on. And again, it's interesting because I'm not sure if it comes from the dates perspective, which is the one factor I talked about, or my own perspective, which is the other factor. Has my dating self-esteem increased since I've been on this path, which is really interesting.
So you mentioned your dating self-esteem. Can you explain what you mean by dateable self-esteem? I think you coined that term, right?
Yes, I did coin the term. I love that term. I separated it out. I parsed it out from this huge concept of self-esteem, because again, this is through what I've seen and observed and the clients I've worked with, and even going back to my own teenage years and into college. It's like this, people assume that if you have a disability, you have low self-esteem and you don't feel good about yourself, and how could life be great because you have a disability? But the fact of the matter is many people with disabilities report very satisfying lives in many domains, including having a ton of friends, being invited to a ton of parties, having really supportive families, having careers, like getting, being educated to the utmost and then having successful careers. But the area that I find continually lacking is that when it comes to your concept of your sexual dateable self. So you can have amazing self-esteem in all these areas, but still feel like love is never going to come your way. And I think it's important to separate the two. And it also makes it easier to discuss and to improve, because, if you've got it going on in all these other areas, and you've identified this, your struggle with dating and what I just spoke about, then we could focus on that in treatment and make it and improve that and improve your odds and, put love in your path.
I'd like you to tell me this story about your mom and you at the mall. And then as part of that, I'd like you to discuss, how people should handle personal ads. Should people be very upfront and have a photo of them where it makes their disability somewhat explicit? Or is it something that, people should refrain from until they get to know the person or when they meet them? What do you think is, the best way to deal with that?
That's an excellent question, Leslie. It's like the question du jour. It's perfect. Okay, so I'll answer the first one about my mom in the mall. It was, on multiple occasions. I was maybe like 16 or in my teenage years. So it was two parts. So it was the part, and I believe I've told this scenario before too, because it's so relevant and meaty, but just being with my sister, who is able-bodied and 2 years younger, and being at my parents' house growing up, and family and friends coming over and asking her about her dating, and does she have a boyfriend, and I have someone for you, and talking to her, and me just kind of sitting there quietly, awkwardly off to the side, not knowing what to say, them not saying anything to me. So the messages to me that I picked up was, okay, this world is not for me, this dating world. And then couple that with trips to the mall with my mom, And whenever we would see a young man in a wheelchair, her elbowing me, point like saying, "Hey, look, Danielle, look at there's someone for you. There's someone to talk to." And I just couldn't reconcile. There was this discrepancy for me, and it didn't make sense, and I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't right, and I couldn't reconcile it. But down the road and currently looking back, it's this concept of ableism that threads through even our dateable self-esteem. So, with the concept of ableism, you deny you kind of hide from your disability, or you try and hide it as much as you can. You try and be quote unquote as able as you can, and to fit into this able-bodied world as best as you can, and make sure you don't look too disabled. And this is my own definition. I know I'm not doing it justice, the full definition of the term, but in a nutshell. So when you're a teen, it's a hard time. So it's kind of a time when ableism is reinforced, and even by the family structure. It's like, okay, do well in school, go, just try your hardest, just so you kind of try not to be so disabled. So it's like, okay, but why would I want to date a guy with a disability then? I'm trying to be normal, Mom. I'm trying to be as normal as possible. And this is not blaming my mom. This is just in general. So as you kind of, I guess, grow into your person and who you are, and kind of boost that dateable self-esteem, you come to the realization that a disability is not something you have to hide. And it sounds cliche, but it's something that makes you makes you unique, and it's something that you can embrace and work it. Work that uniqueness, work the fact that you're sassy in a wheelchair, or any aspect. You can find something great and work it and own your disability. And that's important in the growth of yourself and growing as a person. And it kind of ties into your next question about dating sites and what should you put on there. And so you're probably going to guess what I'm going to say, because it feeds right into it. But I'm a huge proponent of putting it on your profile that you have a disability, because A, it's a part of who you are. It's just a part of it. And B, people online don't like to be surprised by things. You want to be as honest as possible about who you are and what you look like and what your interests are. Why put something out there that's concealed or hidden or falsified? Why waste your time and meet people who might not be the right one for you? So that's and I feel like either putting it in the photos or if you want to write a statement about it in the profile, whatever way to mention it, it's in the long run, it's healthier, and it's healthier for both parties, and it saves time and energy that could be spent on someone that could be better for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been married over 18 years, and so I have no experience with personal ads, but I have so many friends, younger, older, same age, who have, and men, women, disabled, able-bodied, gay, straight. So it's all kind of fascinating, because I do wonder how would I handle this? Because I don't know. I don't know what sort of, and my disability, is something that has been gradual, slowly progressive.
So first of all, congratulations on your 18 years of marriage.
Thank you.
And before I veer too far away, I was listening to what you were saying about how you wonder what you would do if you had to put an online profile up. I find that the theory that's embraced is so if you decide not to put your disability up, the concept is well, I want this person to get to know the real me. And so I want them to get to know me first. And then I'll reveal that I have a disability. And because we'll already be at that level where we like each other and they know me and I know them, it will be easier. They'll accept my disability. But the problem is I find that to not be the case. I just find that I've never heard of that working. I'm sure there's been a couple cases, but I find that in most instances, people feel misled.
Mm-hmm.
So, no one likes to be rejected. Humanity, period, doesn't like to be rejected. So that scenario sets yourself up for a potentially huge rejection, because not only are you being rejected by someone you like, but you're now being rejected by someone you think has gotten to know you and likes you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
It's just bad in many ways. So that being said, yes, in my practice, I do treat all different kinds of disabilities. It's interesting because problems with love and romance, they're very universal. And I've said that in my TED Talk, and we see it in all the TV shows. And I know The Bachelor is airing right now. And whenever one of the female candidates is rejected, her complaint is always like, I just want someone to love me for who I am. So we can see this universal concept playing out right in front of our eyes. And I've no studies to prove it. I feel like if you have a congenital disability versus someone who's sustained an injury or has gotten a disability later in life, it's like with a congenital disability, you've never known any other way of life. Therefore, you've never known any other self-concept except the one that includes yourself with a disability. And hand in hand with that is the notion that you're not dateable or romantically lovable or sexual. So with a congenital disability, you kind of, from the gate, you're believing this, or you're hearing subtle or messages of communicated to you like this. Whereas with a spinal cord injury, you may have gone through adolescence normally and gone through college normally, and I use that word loosely, and you've had the chance to love and be dumped and be married and be divorced. And so I think those two worlds can be very different sometimes, especially when it comes to the origins of dateable self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
I was with a client earlier today, and we were laughing about how, she's several years older now, but she originally came to me at the age of 15. She has a disability, coming to me with questions about sex and disability and dating. And, now with hormones happening, and these were questions on her mind. So, so as soon as people start thinking about romance and dating and sex, and that's when people usually reach out to me. So it's across the spectrum. It's at different ages, different phases of life. And if someone's appropriate for sessions with me, it's mostly the clients that I see over Skype. It's people so the people that it really wouldn't work out, it would be difficult, are people who have very severe mental health diagnoses. So, people who perhaps are in and out of the hospital with psychiatric hospitalizations, or who have, rampant substance abuse. You might need more like really one-on-one kind of intensive. But the people who seek me out have relationship problems or everyday stress or anxiety or depression that kind of we've all felt at some point, and have maybe been escalated at times depending on stressors. And I could be biased because I'm in New York City and in Manhattan, and everyone's in therapy. But therapy, Therapy, in my perspective, is a luxury because it's a time when there's no other time. What other time do you have in your day-to-day life where you have 45 to 50 minutes of your own to talk about whatever you want to talk about, basically in a confidential setting with someone who has there's no contingencies with this person. Your therapist doesn't know your husband, doesn't know your boss, isn't your best friend. So you don't have to tiptoe or skirt around different topics. You could just let it out and be you and talk about your problems in a raw way if you want and work on them. And when do we not have a problem that we need to work on? And again, this is disability or not across the board.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. I thought at a certain age problems would stop, but I can attest to they continue. Different, you get more tools to manage them, but
True. Yeah, you get more tools to add to your tool bag. And at the same time, so it's great to be able to use those tools, and sometimes you have to use them in a different way. So maybe you were using that proverbial wrench in one way, and now there's something else, and you need an opinion on how to negotiate or manage the situation. So, and regarding teletherapy, you've said several times, and that practice is mostly on Skype. It's really becoming more and more popular. So the American Psychological Association has now a designated branch called teletherapy or telepsychology. That's the name it's been dubbed. Because what I found is that the concept, I thought it would be easier for people with disabilities to come to therapy, period, full stop. But what I've found is that it's easier for everyone. It's just easier when you don't have to leave your home, and the therapeutic alliance is the same. And some insurance companies do reimburse teletherapy sessions. And if you think about it, it's for people who travel a lot for business, it's easier for them. So they might not have a disability, but they're just constantly traveling. Mm-hmm. Or people who have to spend time in other countries because of their job, maybe countries where it's hard to find a therapist because therapy is so taboo, or having mental illness is so taboo. And on a funny side note, bringing pop culture into it again, I was watching Girls the other night, the HBO show, the premiere, and one of the characters said to her boyfriend, I need to try this, and this with you because I've been working really hard with my online therapist, and she thinks that, X, Y, and Z. I forget what it was, but I was like, oh, wow, teletherapy is really taking off.
Didn't Lisa Kudrow have a show? The one from Friends?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's web therapy, or it was a sitcom where she's a therapist, an online therapist.
Yeah, I forget the name now. It's escaping me.
Yeah.
But I'll put that on my. It's on my list. I need to bump it up. How could I not see a show on telepsychology?
Yeah. So is this a hard time? Valentine's Day is, upon us. Is it an annoying time for a lot of people, a lot of your clients?
Such an appropriate question. Right, it's right around the corner. I find that for some people, it's a big deal because every client, everybody's different. But to me, Valentine's Day kind of falls under the same umbrella as just a holiday. For example, Christmas or Thanksgiving or New Year's, so from a psychological perspective, or from where I sit as a psychologist, I find that what we see on TV about the holidays, it does not often depict reality. So on TV, we see kissing and hand holding for Valentine's Day, and beautiful couples loving each other, and roses and candy. And for Christmas, we see everyone holding hands around the Christmas tree, singing and smiling and loving and sharing a meal, when usually, most often than not, the holidays are tough. Mm-hmm. And being around family is really hard. And at Christmas, there's often fights with family members, and it's often very different from what we see on TV. So that's a discrepancy that I think that occurs with Valentine's Day. You know, not everyone has this glorious, romantic, rose petal filled evening planned, mm-hmm. where they profess their love to each other. So even though if you're single, it might seem that way, but it's not reality.
I'll second that.
Yes. And it's so important, because if you fall into what the media shows us, it can make you feel really bad about yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's for nothing, really.
Well, any closing advice or?
Well, on the topic of Valentine's Day, I think I would just like to remind people that there's a lot of satisfaction in telling anyone who's around you and close to you that you care about them. So it doesn't have to be someone romantic or who you're in a sexual relationship with. So this act alone can bring happiness and fulfillment, and keeping in mind that maybe love's not happening for you right now, or on Valentine's Day, or in the next couple months, but there's no reason that love cannot be in your path. Mm-hmm. Disability or not, age irrelevant, race irrelevant, gender irrelevant, sexuality irrelevant, all of it irrelevant. There's no reason why it's not going to happen for you. Yeah. So keep focused.
We all definitely deserve love, and
yeah. I think it's humans' lot in life to be on this quest. Again, disability or not. And that's important to keep in mind.
Right. It's now more than ever in times like these. Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Glass Half Full. Leslie invites you to leave a rating and review on iTunes. This helps spread the word to others dealing with chronic health issues. For show notes, updates, and more, visit the website glasshalffull.online. Glasshalffull.online.